Lesson 4, or the second lesson this week. We'll go ahead and view assignment, and we'll go to student view again, because this is what it will look like for you. Now, again, a couple of reminders. Hand in your work on Microsoft Teams. Do not email it to me. You can do this you can print it out and do it at home. I'll show you how to do that in a second. You can open it in your own desktop and do it on there, but you must hand it in on Microsoft Teams. If you're unsure how to do that, watch the video. You'll also notice there's another video you need to watch in this lesson. The link is here. It's also in the lesson, so we can do it either way, whichever works, whichever's easiest. So again, an explanation of those links. If you want to print it, click the print button. If you want to edit it on your own computer, edit in desktop app. We're going to go ahead and edit in browser, because we're going to edit it on Microsoft Teams. Again, by far the easiest way to do it, to be honest, and hand it in. The keywords and definitions you need to read. Pause the video, read those, and the title now. Okay, now you will notice that in this lesson we are talking about the Georgians. I am very excited because most of my time at university was spent, I studied lots of things at university when I did history, but by far my most favourite period and the period I've spent the most time researching and learning about was the Georgians. I find that period, the warfare in that time, the way that the fashion, the architecture, the politics, the social history, what people were doing at home, I found it absolutely fascinating. And I've recently read a book by historian David Olusoga, who you've already heard from a bit, who talks a lot about Black history, and his section on the Georgians blew my mind because it really made me rethink again everything I thought I knew about Georgian history. And I thought I knew quite a lot, having studied it in depth and written my dissertation on it, a 10,000-word essay when I was at university. So I'm very excited to be teaching some Georgian history to you, and that you get to learn about something that's really cutting-edge history. But before we can do that, you need to do the Quizlet task. So again, you're going to recap Enoch Powell's first claim, and you're going to explain from cycle A what was produced, grown and pressed by British plantations in the Caribbean. I'm looking for one particular commodity, one particular thing, and it is not tobacco. You also need to complete the chronology tasks underneath. Should take you 5 to 10 minutes to complete those tasks. Pause the video, do those tasks now. Okay, we'll do them together. The first one, or the earliest on there, is Tudor England. That is from 1485 until about 1603, so I'm going to stick that there. Next comes the Stuarts. They're from about 1603 until 1714. After that comes the Georgians, or industrial Britain. Now, you remember from last week, that kind of comes immediately after the Stuarts, so I'm going to go on the next line underneath. I just pressed enter to do that, and I'm going to put the Georgian or industrial Britain there, maybe slightly forward. Now, remember that those periods overlap. The Georgians until about 1834, and industrial Britain 1850, 1860. But after that comes Victorian Britain from 1837 until 1901. So that's what roughly that should look like. The next events then. Let's see if I'm on fire as much as last time. So Francis Drake sails around the world. Well, that was in 1577. The 7 Years' War, well, that's in the 1750s. I think 1751 to 1758, or maybe 1752 to 1759. 7 years, whatever. That C would go there. The abolition of the slave trade is in 1807, so that's going to go here. And then the abolition of slavery is in 1833, so that's going to go there. That's roughly how it should look. Now, Here's some information about Dr. David Olusoga, one of my heroes. In 2016, he wrote a book called Black and British, A Forgotten History. In fact, hold that thought. Here's my copy. This is the book he wrote. It's wonderful. Really, really good. Great read. Where was I? His book is about black migrants who lived in Britain throughout our history. And he claims that black and British histories, black history and British history are woven together. We shouldn't separate white history, black history, migration history, because they are all the same thing. British history. Like Dr. Kaufman's book, Black Tudors, this was new cutting-edge history, and it shows how the knowledge of history can change when we find new sources of information. The section of the book about Black Georgians also helps us to keep testing Enoch Powell's first claim that the British Empire did not change England or Britain. Okay. So what I need you to do is go ahead and watch the video that I've put together for you. Part of it is from a documentary created by Dr. Olusoga, and part of it is things that I've found for you. What I need you to do is watch the video. It's going to talk to you about 3 different Black Georgians who migrated to England, and I need you to fill in the table below. Now, it should be quite familiar because it's very similar to the one you did last week about Black Tudors. What is their name? What is their occupation? How and why did they come to Britain? And notes or other important information. Now, I'm not going to put this video up in the browser or up on the video, but just as a reminder, if you hold down Control, well, it's not doing it. If you hold down Control, it comes up with the little Peter pointer, this little finger. I can click on that. It's going to take me to the video. If I go onto YouTube, it's going to play automatically for me. Okay, there you go. So go on and watch that video. I will help you by telling you it is going to tell you or talk about 3 different Black Georgians. The first one is a guy called Bill Richmond. Secondly, it's going to talk about Francis Barber. And thirdly, it's going to talk about Elizabeth or Dido Bell. Okay? You need to write down what each of those persons' job is. They sort of might not have a job, one of them. How and why they came to Britain, and notes or anything else that you want to remember that you think is important about them. They are all really interesting stories, so enjoy the video. Pause the video here, fill in that table now. Okay, now the next task is to sort of bring some of that video together and think about how it relates to Enoch Powell's first claim that Britain was not changed by the empire. So, how or why did most of the migrants Dr. Olusoga uncovered come to Britain? You're going to select one of these coloured boxes, 1, the yellow one, 2, the kind of orangey pinky one, or 3, the blue one, by writing underneath where it says type number here, which box you reckon. So read each of those boxes, think about it, decide which one fits. Should take you a minute or so. Okay, if you've not done so already, type the number you think fits underneath. Now, for me, the one that you should have is number 3. The reason they migrated was linked to the British Empire. Now, why do I say this? Well, Bill Richmond, he migrates to Britain because he's escaping America. He was escaping America during the War of Independence. In the 1770s, America, which was a British colony, broke away from Britain. The American people wanted to rule themselves. And Britain offered slaves, people from Africa originally who'd been bought over as slaves. The British government offered those people freedom if they fought for Britain during the Revolutionary War. So hundreds, perhaps even thousands, did choose to fight for Britain. And after the American Revolution was over, the Americans won and they got their independence from the British Empire. Once that was finished, hundreds escaped to Britain. Hundreds of black enslaved people from Africa originally migrated to Britain. And Bill Richmond is one of those. So clearly he's migrating to Britain because, one, he's an ex-slave, and two, because, well, he fought for Britain during the Revolutionary War in America, part of Britain's empire. He's coming back to Britain because he feels safer there. If we think about Francis Barber, for example, he as well was a slave originally, brought over from Jamaica, part of the British Empire, by Dr. Johnson. Dido Elizabeth, or Elizabeth Dido, however you want to say it, Bell, she was the daughter of a slave, albeit with an aristocrat, with a British naval officer. But again, it was only able to happen because of the empire. Almost all of the stories of Georgian Britons living in Britain, Black Georgians living in Britain, and were hundreds, perhaps thousands, are linked in some way to the empire. They were in Britain because of the empire. So for me, the only number you could type is number 3. Here's Enoch Powell's claim again. The nationhood of the mother country has remained unaltered, unchanged through it all, almost unconscious of the strange, fantastic structure the British Empire built around her. Again, Enoch Powell says the British Empire did not change England or Britain. I mean, I don't know about you, right? But I look at that and I think, what a wally. Did he actually look at history? Did he actually consider the historical evidence in detail, carefully? Because books like this, work by Dr. Miranda Kaufman, well, they tell us that that's just simply not true. There were hundreds of black people living in Britain who migrated from the empire, and that's just a drop in the ocean. We haven't even thought about people migrating from Asia yet. For example, the first Asian MP was during the Victorian times. A man from India became a member of parliament in England. It's impossible, I think, to say that Britain was unaltered by empire. But you need to now list some evidence underneath. And you're going to do that where it says type here. Now, I've given you lots of evidence there when I was just talking, but you can go up and you can look at your table and you can find the things that you wrote down about Bill Richmond, about Elizabeth Dido Bell, about Francis Barber, and you can add them as evidence here to help us prove that Enoch Powell is incorrect and the British Empire was changed, or did change England or Britain. You're then going to decide how far you agree with Enoch Powell's first claim. I mean, it probably would be no surprise that I reckon it's a 0. And you're not going to circle a number. You're going to select a number from 0 to 10, and then you are going to write your number here, literally where I've just typed that underneath. So I, for example, would write 0. I think Enoch Powell's a wally. Once you have done that, I've given you on the next page an extract from Dr. David Olusoga from his book. Now, there's a problem. I couldn't get this to work on Word Online because, like I've said before, it is rubbish and it doesn't work properly. So you can't edit this document. But you can see all the questions here. You can see all the little help that I've given you, the keywords and things like that in the blue boxes. You need to read this extract and then answer all of these questions. Now, you've got 2 options for how you do that. You're either going to press enter at the bottom here and do it on the next page. You can answer those questions there, or you can use a piece of paper or a notepad at home and you can write the answers out, okay? Whichever way, you need to pause the video here and complete that reading task and answer all the questions. It should take you at least 10 minutes. Pause the video here, complete that task now. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. His book is wonderfully well written, and I certainly find it a riveting read. What I need you to do now is, using that extra knowledge, that extra evidence from David Olusoga's extract, we're going to think again about Enoch Powell's first claim. A reminder that he says the British Empire did not change England or Britain. It almost passed it by. British people and Britain didn't even notice the empire existed. What new evidence from your reading might go against Enoch Powell? Make a list where it says type here below. At this point, you might want to go back to the extract and reread it. For example, I think I might be copying some of this stuff here, where it says the links between Britain, Africa, and the Caribbean that had been forged over the 4 centuries of the British Empire did not simply fall away. The existence of these interconnections and the presence in Britain of thousands of black people who claimed British citizenship who migrated was profoundly at odds, etc., etc. That whole passage I could copy down and put at the bottom there. Or if I was looking for more specific facts, I might write this. There had been black Stuarts and black Tudors, and in the 1960s, across North America and the Caribbean, lived millions of people of African descent. Ancestors had been transported into the New World by British slave traders. That's clearly evidence that not only is the British Empire affecting Britain, but those British people who are affected by empire are also affecting the rest of the world, because there's thousands, perhaps millions of people descended from those people British men transported. So I would be recording that evidence where it says type here underneath. You're then going to do the same task as you did in the last lesson. So I'm not going to go through this in lots of detail. You're going to select a number again. It might be the same as before. That's fine. Type it again. For example, I would type 0. You're going to select a word from the table. For example, I would write dispute. And then you're going to explain why you wrote that number or why you selected that number, as to how far you agree with Enoch Powell's first claim. You're going to explain why you've done that underneath, and you must use the word you selected in your explanation. So I must use dispute, for example. Pause the video here and do that now. But in fact, that's going to be the end of the video, because that's the last task this week. Pause the video, complete that task now. See you next week.